really matters? That might be the most important question you can ask. So let's talk about it. Welcome to What Really Matters, Everyday Spirituality with Karen Wyatt. Thanks for joining me here today. I'm going to share with you a little story. It's actually really early in the morning. I got up before sunrise, so I'm sitting here in the very dim light of the first awakening of the day and just awakening myself. And I'm going to just tell you a story. And it's based on the saying by Confucius, everything has beauty, but not everyone sees it. And so I'll tell you about an experience I had a couple of days ago. I was feeling a little tired and burned out because I'd been working really hard for the last couple of weeks and decided I needed to take a break and go down and walk by the ocean because right now I'm fortunate enough to be living right across the street from the ocean. I can walk down to the beach anytime I choose. So I went down and started walking on the sand next to the water, and it was a stretch of beach where there was no one else. I had this area all to myself. So I love walking right at the edge of the water where the waves like lap up and touch my feet, and the sand is firm and cool and usually flat. And that's just my favorite thing, to walk along the edge of the water. It's refreshing and calming to be there, and particularly when I'm there all by myself. So walking along alone with my thoughts, but clearing my head somewhat from all the stress of the past few weeks. And suddenly I noticed a flower petal laying on the sand. It was the pink petal of a rose. And I looked up ahead of me and I could see more petals scattered here and there on the sand. And I realized they must have washed in after someone had scattered them out in the ocean. Someone had had a ceremony or a ritual of some sort and scattered those rose petals. So as I kept walking, I kept finding more and more petals. Some were tucked away in seaweed, some were partially buried in the sand, but there were more and more and more of them. So I stood for a while and I thought about what kind of ceremony might have taken place where these petals were scattered. And I imagined someone being out on the ocean in a boat. Perhaps it was a ceremony of sorrow. Perhaps it was a scattering of someone's ashes, or a letting go and releasing ceremony where someone ended by tossing petals out to sea. But it could also have been a joyous ceremony. Maybe it was an engagement or even a wedding taking place on a boat, and people were scattering rose petals as a way of celebrating the event. And I thought about how lovely the picture in my mind is of people on a boat tossing these flower petals to the waves, watching them float away, not knowing where they would end up, but as a symbol and a sign of letting go, but also of scattering love and scattering good wishes and goodwill. And that it takes an act of faith in a way to hold beauty in your hands and then toss it out to the ocean where you have no idea where it will go or what will befall it. But having a faith in a sense that all of the love and the meaning that you're imbuing these petals with is going to carry on. And thinking about how much meaning whoever scattered the petals put into them. What was their intention? What were they thinking and feeling as they held the petals and then released them into the ocean? And so I suddenly had the idea that I needed to gather those petals and do something with them. I didn't know what, but I started picking them up and walking along the beach, and I finding more and more. I ended up with a whole handful of petals. And I decided that I needed to honor them because these petals had already been part of someone's beautiful ritual. And here they were, they had all washed up together right at the moment when I was walking along the beach and needing to do something to refresh myself. So it seemed the petals were offering themselves to me, and that this was a nudge to me to do something with the petals. So again, as I said, I gathered them up in my hands and went to a place where the sand was somewhat flat, and I started just arranging the petals on the sand. And I started with the largest petals that were still intact and placed them, sort of cupped them one inside the other. I put a little bit of sand at the bottom to help anchor the petals so they wouldn't blow away right away. And without really thinking about it, I was making a mandala of sorts, a spiral shape with the petals growing smaller and smaller until they spiraled around into the center, the smallest petals. And I noticed that, of course, some of the petals had been badly battered and torn by the waves, and some of them were not really usable in my design. Some were just fragments and pieces of petals, but others were still whole, and others were still retained their perfect shape. All of them retained their beautiful color. So I continued my design, my spiral design, and I then took all the fragmented petals that were broken and left, and I scattered those around the outside. And it was so lovely. And I was really touched by the beauty of this simple little shape of rose petals on the beach, and that those petals that had already been used for their purpose, being scattered out in the ocean, now had found a second use. And I sat with them for a long time. I held space once again. I thought about the person who scattered the petals, wondering why, wondering what the petals symbolized for them, what the ceremony consisted of, but holding space for whatever joy or sorrow was present as the petals were thrown into the sea, and knowing that certainly there was love present when those petals were tossed in the sea, love along with the joy and sorrow. So I held space, and I began to hold space for my own joy and sorrow, and to see that these petals that had really come to me or were given to me by the sea were an opportunity for me to release all of the stress and the worry and the difficulty that I had been holding as well. And to remember how connected we are, even across the sea, even in different times and places. We're connected so much by the joy and sorrow that we carry within us, by the love that we share, by the things that we toss and scatter, the faith that we have when we throw things out into the unknown, not knowing where they will land. By the uncertainty of this life, each one of us is going to be tossed around by the sea. Each one of us is battered, and we end up washing ashore sometimes completely spent, completely used up. But there we are, and the beauty remains, and the love remains. For there is beauty even in the broken things of life, even in the things that have been used up and torn. and even in ourselves when we feel used up and torn. So again, I sat for quite a while with these petals, and I watched as the tide started rising up the shore, and I knew within a short while, probably an hour or so, the tide would once again touch those petals and carry them all back out to the ocean for who knows what, who knows where they would travel next, where they might land next, who might find them, and what love or joy or beauty would be seen by the person who found those petals next. So I walked away and left the petals there. I didn't wait for the ocean to reclaim them, but I knew that the ocean would. I knew that they would go back out to sea. And later that day, I posted a picture of the mandala I had made with a little explanation of this story that I'm just telling you right now. And the next day, I received a message from a woman far away from me who said, I'm a person who regularly scatters flower petals on the ocean in all sorts of ceremonies. She said, I use them for lots and lots of rituals out on the sea. And she said to hear the story that someone found them and gathered them and honored those petals with another new ritual just fills my heart. And so, of course, my heart was filled to read that note from her and to realize that we are connected. We are so connected to other people, as I said, in our joy and our sorrow, in our appreciation of beauty, in our hope and faith, in the love that we share, that we spread, that we toss out to the wind and the waves. And it was so lovely to have this little thread of connection with another person who had found beauty in rose petals and had used them in a ritual, in a ceremony, and not necessarily that the woman who messaged me had scattered these exact petals, but the fact that we had both engaged in and appreciated this little ritual of seeing the beauty in everything and the possibility of love in everything. And so I wanted to use this little story briefly today to just remind you to look for the beauty wherever you go. As Confucius says, not everyone sees it, but everyone could see it. We could. We just have to stop sometimes for a moment, take a deep breath, slow down a little bit, use our eyes and look and watch and be aware that there's beauty everywhere. There's beauty in everything. So that we start to see with new eyes, eyes that can recognize beauty and spot it in a moment. If we're able to find the beauty that exists all around us, and trust me, it truly is everywhere in everything, we are able to step out of some of the despair and the heaviness and the discouragement that we feel in life. This beauty, these little moments, these little fragments of beauty are so inspiring and uplifting. And they remind us over and over again that life most of the time is about something that we don't quite see. Life is so much bigger than the things that we worry about and the things that we stress over. Life is about the love we share, even with strangers we've never met. Life is about remembering that we're connected to one another, to everything on the planet and in the universe. Life is about finding meaning wherever we go. Life is about seeing the beauty and creating even more beauty with the fragments that we find in front of us. So today, I hope that you will slow down just a little bit, that you will look at the world through new eyes, that you will see the beauty that exists around you, that you will be inspired to create even more beauty and more meaning and to scatter love wherever you go and to receive love in all the tiny broken fragments of beauty that enter into your life. Until the next time we're together, remember, as I'm saying, that we're here for love. That's the most important thing we could focus on. And like beauty, it's truly everywhere around us. So face your fear, be ready for whatever life brings you next, and love each and every moment of your precious life. Bye-bye.